Hey there, welcome to the Uncensored Unprofessor, a podcast where I want to think more deeply with you about Christian faith and life. Hey, all you believers, you non-believers, unaffiliated believers, sort of believers, and you think I'm a believer's, welcome. Welcome to the Uncensored Unprofessor, the no longer constrained doctor. Welcome to all of you who want to go deeper than a bumper sticker. Yesterday, while I was on my 1.5-mile neighborhood walk, I stopped and fed some carrots to a few horses. And that's my regular routine. I stop along the way and feed one horse here and one horse there, and I feed 4 horses near the end of the walk. Neighbors all around us own ponies. And I gotta tell you, I'm always amazed at how nimble, how deft, how subtle the horse's lips can be. They have a mouth that, by appearance anyway, could take my hand off in a single bite. But when they go to snag that half a carrot out of my palm, their lips are as delicate as human fingers. Amazing creatures, horses. Well, it had been raining off and on around here the last few days, and that was followed by a weekend of 3 inches of snow or so, and that all began to melt off. So the corral was a muddy mess. The 2 white horses reached me first, and they were enjoying their carrots, and then one of the brown horses, the youngest of the string, finally decided she was hungry for a snack, and she bolted up near the fence where I was standing. And as she rushed up, she tripped on a big sprinkler head, and in the process of catching herself, she just splattered my pants with mud and horse manure. Big globs shot everywhere. When I came home, I even saw a mud poo splatter on my cheek. Well, I tried to wipe off most of it, and then I laughed at how messy life can be. And that's certainly true regarding sex, huh? Wow! There is so much confusion, not only in society, but I'm convinced that confusion has spilled over into the church as it concerns sexuality. And you guys, this is my first episode in a series on sexuality, and by your emails and Facebook posts, you've repeatedly told me that this is a topic you would like to hear me cover. So you know me, I aims to please. So come, let us reason together. Let's think critically with regard to a sadly divisive issue in society, sex. I used to say aloud in my university department meetings that if we would just entitle our classes Anything and Sex, we'd have crazy enrollment numbers, right? Imagine these class names: Eschatology and Sex, or Byzantine Church History and Sex, or Theoanthropology and Sex. Don't all of those titles just hook you like a gaffed tuna? Well, our culture is utterly fascinated with sexuality, but I think that's a very human constant. Because if we studied civilizations, old or new, there is always a strong emphasis upon sexuality. And if we think about it, across history, humans work either a kind of bacchanalian. Bacchus was the god of wine and partying and excess. We either work a kind of bacchanalian, frenetic, ritual madness, unbounded chaos, orgiastic celebration of sex, or we work a kind of ascetic, prudish, puritanical stifling of sex, right? To the former, frenetic, no bounds of sex, we could note ancient Rome with its celebration both of orgy and temple prostitution. And I got to tell you, I've always thought, wow, what a way to have your cake and eat it too. Because in ancient Rome, you could be sexually orgiastic and then call all of that worshiping your god. Amazing. Or to the latter, that puritanical and ascetic, forced, restrictive, regimented by force kind of view of sex, Some philosophers might call it an Apollinarian view of sex. Apollos was a god of order, or some would call it a eunomian view of sex. Eunomia was the Greek goddess of order. That view of sex has been prevalent in human history. For example, we could point out Islam across its 1,600 years of history, where Muslims are so afraid of female sexuality that they make women not only cover their bodies with robes, right? They're called burqas, and those are used to disguise shoulders and hips and breasts and butts. But they also cover their faces with niqabs. And clearly, it's a way to cover the woman up, but sadly, it's a way to dehumanize her. Because in Islam, woman is much less than man. In most Muslim cultures, she cannot get an education. She has no legal testimony in court. She's the property of a man. And so her physical form is dangerous, and so it's to be entirely covered up. It's extremely ascetic, profoundly puritanical, and some even might say diabolical. But we have those two extremes across human history. Well, if you grew up in church, like me, you know that the standard Christian teaching on human sexuality is don't. It's sort of like that old Bob Newhart skit where he plays a psychologist, and his counsel to a woman who was struggling with a fear of being buried alive in a box was, "Stop it." She tries to go deeper through the conversation in explaining her fear, and his continual response to her is, "Stop it." It's a hilarious skit. You should go find it on YouTube. But I'm sad to say that's pretty much the Christian teaching on the matter too. Stop it. What should a teenager who struggles with her sexual impulses do? Stop it. What should a young man snared in the coils of pornography do? Stop it. What should two office workers involved in an extramarital affair do? Stop it. It gets kind of abrupt. And while it holds significant truth, it's pretty much an abbreviated approach to thinking about human sexuality. Now, if that's the Christian side of the issue, the secular, or we might even say the scientific side of the issue, is equally abrupt. If I can take Nike's old and famous slogan, we're regularly bombarded with the secular and scientific view of sexuality, which is just do it. What if I want to sleep with him? Just do it. What if I find her attractive? Just do it. Should we move in together before marriage? Just do it. Since I'm just a body with deep impulses, how should I decide? Just do it. Since we are merely enfleshed globs of electrified matter, what should we do about our sexuality? Just do it. Since my mind is really who I am and not my body, can I boink her on a one-night stand? Just do it. If sexual intercourse really has no lasting effect upon myself or my mind or my state of being, how should I choose? Just do it. Well, between the stop it and the just do it, we have quite a variance concerning sexuality. We have on the one hand extreme asceticism, and on the other hand a kind of frenetic orgy. In that way we mirror the prior centuries of human history. However we think about the human person or human nature, we are sexual beings. Now, I don't believe that the core of our personal identity is our sexuality, because me, the person, Ed, is male, but maleness is not finally who I am. Myself is inextricably bound to my maleness, but my personhood far transcends my maleness. I won't take the time to develop this here, but maybe that kind of thinking will become evident across these series of podcasts on sexuality. Oh, and please know, just as a very quick aside, I'm not going to bother much to get into the distinctions between sex and gender here. The root of our human construction is our sex. Yes, gender is a layer, a filter, an overlay, a context put across or through how we process our sex, but sex is the core category, not gender. Sex is determined by our ontology, by genetics. Gender is crafted by many different changing dynamics and perspectives, not immediately grounded in ontology, not immediately grounded in genetics. Before I go on, I simply must show my gratitude. Thank you, Becca L., Johnny D., and Stephen D. for your Facebook shares. Those shares help expose the UU show to people beyond my own reach, so I'm really thankful. You guys, you can also go and like my UU Facebook page. That helps to increase my visibility and status with Facebook. And I'm happy to say that the number of Patreon monthly pledge supporters is also growing. Thank you dearly to Katie P. and Jenny M. for your generous pledges. Recently, I was able to purchase some business cards, and I'm also in the process of upgrading the UU webpage to a better level because of those Patreon pledges. Please prayerfully consider a pledge of $5 or more per month. And if you do that, I give you access to a couple exclusive podcasts each month. For example, I've done one on the Me Too movement and a couple on why I left my university teaching slot. And then just recently, I posted my first in a series on Christians and politics. What are some political options that Christians have embraced and why? I want to elucidate folks' understanding of different political positions and why they function the way they do. And I got to tell you, that's a topic I never covered in college classes because I didn't want to lose half of my students. But for Patreon supporters, you can hear me speak more pointedly on that matter. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all of your support and your prayers and your help, you guys. It really means a great deal to me. Jerry, here's the real deal. How we think about human nature will determine how we think about human sexuality. Because it is important, because this is a seminal point that is going to shape the entire podcast series, let me say it again. How we think about human nature will determine how we think about human sexuality. For example, if with the materialists, we think humanity is merely an electrified mass of bone, muscles, tendons, and chemicals, then we can treat the human person as a mere material construct. Millions of people think this way today. Millions of people are being taught to think this way, and I believe it so lacks imagination. And by the way, materialism fails big time to account for humankind's need for meaning and significance and transcendence. And the product of this we are mere matter approach is the belief that what we do with our bodies does not really matter. And so it would make sense to say, I can sleep with as many women as possible because in the end it won't affect me. Or we could say, yes, I can move in with him and give him my sex, and there will be no long-term repercussion because myself, being merely energized matter, I won't be affected anyway. There's some materialist thinking. Or, thinking about human nature, if with the nihilists, those who believe this life, this earth, this universe, this segment of time that during which we are alive, it's all ultimately about nothing, right? Nihil is Latin for nothing. If with the nihilists we say it's about nothing, then it's logical to say that it doesn't matter whether we are male or female. In fact, because it doesn't matter, we can positively shape ourselves, make ourselves, will ourselves, change ourselves, right? You're watching it in the news. We're watching it in our daily experience. If one doesn't like being male, one can, by force of will, change and become female. If one doesn't like being female, one can, in a Nietzschean will to power move, simply take some hormones and have some medical procedures and become a male. So we're told. I'm going to have a lot more to say on that later. Or if, say, with the vigorous, committed atheists, we say that human sexuality is just a matter of a random luck of the draw, then male and female really are of no lasting consequence, right? Maleness is just an accident, maybe even a toxic accident that causes great harm, but it's an accident just the same. And apparently femaleness, because she has taken a beat down from maleness for millennia, femaleness is even a worse accident, a harder to accept accident. But neither maleness nor femaleness to a committed atheist have anything distinct to offer humanity or society. They're just the luck of the empty universe's draw. And by the way, atheism fails big time to account for humankind's need for meaning and significance and transcendence. Thinking about maleness and femaleness, it reminds me of a story I recently came across. One day, a group of husbands and wives went to a scientific program. The doctor there was showing them brains from real people and telling them how expensive it would be to buy one. He said it was $5 million for a female brain and $10 million for a male brain. The men in the group snickered, thinking they knew why. One of the women asked, "Well, why is that, sir?" And the doctor answered, "The men's brains cost more because they have never been used." Right? It's so fun, so easy to beat up on men today. You guys, every single one of those worldviews, committed atheism, materialism, nihilism, every one of those worldviews makes sense inside of themselves. Every one of those perspectives rests on a series of values, commitments, and ultimate beliefs which cannot finally be proven. Everything that I said in my Faith and Reason series comes to play here. Every one of those narratives makes sense if someone will just accept the premises of that worldview. Why is there so much confusion about sexuality in the United States? Because there are dramatically different worldviews fighting with one another. We would like to think that after, 240 years, we'd all be on the same page. But in fact, we are more diverse and separated than ever. We are less unified, less observant of the same values, less willing to share a gelling worldview than ever. And the incontrovertible fact remains: how we think about human nature will determine how we think about human sexuality. Me? I have friends, college students, and even family members who say, "Ed, why don't you just live and let live? What difference does it make to persuade for a particular view? What difference does it make? Why not just let people decide for themselves about their own sexuality?" Why, Ed, for goodness sake, why do you argue for a Christian worldview? And here's my answer. How we think about human nature will determine how we think about human sexuality. And I I'm convinced that there's something profound at stake here. But it's not just me who believes that. It's also the materialists and the atheists and the nihilists and the spiritualists too. They each want their view to be in the ascendancy just as much as Christians do. We all, for our varied reasons, believe something is at stake. Now again, it's not simply sex or sexuality or what two men or two women do in the privacy of their bedroom that's at stake. Though I'm increasingly amazed at how just what people do in the privacy of their bedroom actually does affect public policy. Oh me, oh my. But back to the point, how we define human sexuality is incontrovertibly part and parcel of how we define human nature, as all my above examples have asserted. Think of it with me. President Bill Clinton signed the Defense of Marriage Act, the DOMA Act, a bill saying that marriage was something reserved between a man and woman, clear back in September of 1996. And Hillary Clinton averred the same in a speech in the year 2000 when she was running for a New York State Senate seat. And then with the Supreme Court of the United States, the SCOTUS signing of Obergefell on June 26, 2015, marriage was determined to be a right guaranteed for homosexuals as well as heterosexuals. The shift regarding sexuality has happened swiftly. We've gone from some 3,500 years, dating back to the origins of the Old Testament, where marriage was reserved for a man and a woman, to marriage being open to anyone, sex being no determinant or consequence. It has been an amazingly swift change, and it's occurred over some, 15, 20 years? Well, elsewhere I described it as rather like a glacier going off a cliff. Imperceptibly, glaciers can move a mere half-inch per year. But when they finally fall over a cliff, the consequences can be spectacular. And again, if one adopts the materialist or atheist or nihilist worldviews, then that swift shift is going to be celebrated. Old patterns have been eliminated, and old boundaries are being torn down. For me, as I think through this is a philosophical issue, because just how do we as a society define human nature? If we are mere physical matter, how are we different from the animals? And there are an increasing number of people living amongst us who believe we are not different. This is a philosophical issue. This is also a teleological issue, which has to do with the ultimate goals and ends for humanity. What's the purpose of being human? What should society be in light of human nature? What, really just what, in the end, makes human beings happy? This is philosophical. This is teleological. And as I said before, this is ontological. What is the core of the human being? Ontology goes toward the issue of being. What makes our being distinctly human and not merely a compilation of stardust? What does it mean to be human? More and more in society, we have people openly and vociferously answering nothing. Well, me? Wow. Is being human, say, following Friedrich Nietzsche, say Nietzsche class, teacher, is being human that our supreme element is willpower? Is willpower the thing that makes us different from the horses I feed carrots to on my daily walks? Really? Is this, following Marx and Freud and Nietzsche, a mere power grab? Is this simply a chess game about who can ultimately grasp and wield the most power? I say all that, you guys, because the issues here are deep, and what is at stake is profound. Again, for me, a thinker, a theologian, a sometime philosopher. The deepest and most profound issue in all of this is, what does it mean to be human? How do we define human nature? And then following together with that, concomitantly, does sex play into that definition? Do male and female matter? Are male and femaleness given to us at birth by genetics or God? Or are male and female mere meaningless accidents? Are they really accidents that can be, really indeed ought to be, overridden by human technological power? These are the kind of issues at stake. Because how we define human nature will determine dozens of political matters, like who gets government funding and why? Who gets special victim status, special legal protection and why? How will our government officials determine to spend millions and billions of dollars? How will our laws be written and why, right? Laws are already being rewritten, not only about marriage, but about sports funding, sports participation, club membership, job hiring policies. We could make a long list of how this is affecting legal frameworks. Which worldviews will be regnant? Which worldviews will rule and why? Which cherished worldviews will influence public policy and why? Who's qualified to have and raise children and why? Does religious practice influence definitions of human nature? Does religious practice trump individual practice or vice versa? Do hate speech laws trump the right to believe and worship as one deems fit? On that point, the collision between religious rights and individual sexual rights, you only need to go and read some studies about Scandinavia or Great Britain or Canada to learn that this stuff gets really hot really fast. Church pastors are losing the ability to preach freely. And that's just one little example of where this is headed. I hope all of that, you guys. I hope all of that isn't exhausting. I'm taking the time to develop the importance and the gravity of all of this because I'm afraid too much of the church has been mute on the matter. And our silence is taken to be indifference by the larger culture. God bless you, pastors and other Christian leaders. I know some of you just want to preach Jesus saves. I know you just want to bless people, but it's not enough. At light speed, the world is changing, and with it, the ability to be openly and freely religious, whether Jewish or Christian or broadly theist, that is being eroded. Because you won't take the time to learn and study what is going on, pastors. Your people frequently do not know how to parse these delicate but foundational matters. I was simply stopped cold by how little preaching and teaching I heard from the pulpit or saw from Christian leaders on the internet following the June 2015 Obergefell ruling on marriage. Because, pastors, you won't take the courage to speak out, even in gracious and loving and salvific ways, about the effect that sexuality and definitions of what it means to be human are having upon millions of people, your churches are being decimated from within. The people worshiping in your buildings may be functional non-believers when it comes to their heart-held worldviews. And all of that, when Christians were called by, who was it? Oh yeah, Jesus of Nazareth told us we're called to be salt and light. He meant for us to have a societal effect, to have a leavening effect, to get inside of things and make a difference, because he sure did. He wants us to be like him. But when we hide in our Christian subculture bubble for the sake of expediency, people might not come to our church or our university. We water down our salt and hide our light under a bushel. By this series on human sexuality and a Christian worldview, I want to push back against that. Wee-wee. Well, you guys, thank you sincerely for listening today. God richly bless you and yours with health and wisdom. In my next episode, I'm going to reveal just what does the Bible show us by way of human sexuality. But for now, turn your brains on, everybody.